Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. This podcast is being recorded on May 11th, 2024, and I'm your host, Neil Bisson, a retired intelligence officer with the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and the director of Global Intelligence Knowledge Network. For those of you who have listened to my podcast before, you're aware that with Global Intelligence Knowledge Network Weekly Wrap-Up, I go through some of the week's Canadian and international headlines and news articles to give you a rundown of what's happening in the world of intelligence, espionage, foreign interference, and national security, with the added bonus of analysis from a 25-year veteran of the security and intelligence fields. Today we'll be covering stories concerning everything from Canada's decision to repatriate the children of an ISIS terrorist, to India's reaction to the arrest of 3 men charged in the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, to the expulsion of a Russian diplomat from the United Kingdom for dangerous activities. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. We start with the recent development concerning the repatriation of 6 Canadian children from a detention camp in Syria, where their mother was deemed a national security risk due to her affiliation with ISIS. The children, who were in the care of a Canadian woman, were freed from a detention camp and have safely arrived in Canada. Lawrence Greenspan, their lawyer, confirmed their return, emphasizing that all 6 children will be housed together in a single family. Global Affairs Canada expressed gratitude with the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria for their cooperation in facilitating the return. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly emphasized the importance of the children's well-being, acknowledging the challenging circumstances they faced. However, she refrained from commenting further on the matter. This repatriation comes amidst ongoing efforts by various Western countries, including Canada, to bring back their citizens who were captured after voluntarily joining ISIS in Syria. There are deeper levels of complexities surrounding this case than just the repatriation of children to Canada. Their mother is deemed a security risk and remains abroad after she left the camp. According to Greenspan, she is likely attempting to reach a Canadian embassy to facilitate her own return to Canada. Internal memos from Public Safety Canada reveal that the decision not to repatriate the mother stemmed from a lack of evidence to justify her arrest upon return. While she may hold extremist ideology beliefs, law enforcement agencies currently lack sufficient evidence to pursue charges against her under Canadian law. I've seen this type of case take place many times before in relationship to terrorism issues, and it haunts Canadian intelligence and security as well as law enforcement. Individuals who choose to travel for the purpose of participating in terrorist-related activities are identified as Canadian Extremist Travellers and pose a significant and real threat to Canada and other Western nations. Unfortunately, because of their Canadian citizenship, they often claim repatriation as a right, and with the added responsibility of already having children repatriated, this places the Canadian government in a difficult position of what to do next. Without laws and statutes that are more easily enforceable in regard to Canadian extremist travelers, Canada may be forced to continue to repatriate individuals who travel and participate in terrorist activities and hope that their previous actions don't lead to further terrorist activity in Canada or abroad. It is crucial to note that this case highlights the multifaceted challenges faced by governments in dealing with individuals associated with terrorist organizations like ISIS. The delicate balance between national security concerns and humanitarian considerations underscores the complexities of such repatriation efforts. As we continue to monitor developments in this case, it serves as a reminder of the ongoing global struggle against terrorism and the imperative to address its multifaceted dimensions. For our next story, we turn our focus to the foreign interference front. This week, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc announced plans to bolster measures following the inquiry report and arrest linked to India. Mr. LeBlanc's pledge to introduce legislation aimed at combating foreign interference underscored the growing concern over the integrity of our democratic processes. The recent interim report on foreign meddling in Canada's elections has reignited discussions on safeguarding national sovereignty against external threats. The arrest of 3 Indian nationals in connection with the 2023 killing of BC Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar has intensified scrutiny on foreign governments' activities on Canadian soil and raises more questions regarding Canada's ability to address these types of security challenges while maintaining diplomatic relations with implicated nations. Despite assurances on ongoing efforts to strengthen security measures, concerns linger over the effectiveness of existing protocols in preventing foreign interference. Minister LeBlanc's acknowledgement of the need for legislative enhancement reflects a proactive approach to addressing vulnerabilities in Canada's security apparatus. However, the delicate balance between accountability and diplomatic engagement poses a complex challenge for Canada, particularly in navigating its relations with countries like India. The tension between holding foreign actors accountable and preserving diplomatic ties underscores the nuanced dynamics of international relations. As Canada grapples with these intricacies, it's imperative to prioritize the protection of national interests while upholding principles of transparency and accountability. The pursuit of effective strategies to combat foreign interference must be guided by a comprehensive understanding of the geopolitical landscape and its implications for Canadian security. Essentially, Canada needs to demonstrate that we will maintain our national security by ensuring that Canadian citizens aren't assassinated by state actors while trying to maintain political and economic ties with countries like India. Another dimension of the story comes from reporting that India's Foreign Affairs Minister, Subrahmanyam Jaishankar, commented on the recent RCMP arrest connections with Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder. Jaishankar accused Canada of harboring criminals from India and fostering a violent Sikh separatist movement, particularly in reference to the Khalistan movement. He asserted that Canada, not the United States, is India's primary concern in this regard. This sharp critique comes in response to the RCMP's recent charges against 3 Indian nationals implicated in Nijjar's death, whose murder ignited protest against Indian diplomats in Canada. Jaishankar's remarks underscore India's growing unease with Canada's perceived tolerance of Sikh separatist activities, which it views as a threat to its sovereignty. Furthermore, Jaishankar emphasized that Canada's response to such incidents could have broader implications, urging Foreign Minister Melanie Joly to consider how Canada would react if its diplomatic missions were similarly targeted. While India has repeatedly raised concerns about Canada's handling of Sikh separatism, Ottawa maintains that individuals accused of terrorism must be prosecuted based on evidence that meets Canada's legal standards. By continuing cooperation with law enforcement and the Canadian intelligence community, India is better placed, providing sufficient and accurate information on individuals who are actively participating in terrorist activity. This does not include the right of Canadians to protest and discuss separation of a state within India. As tensions persist, it remains imperative for intelligence agencies to closely monitor developments and assess the evolving threat landscape in the context of bilateral relations between Canada and India. The Indian Foreign Minister's comments regarding Canada harboring criminals brings us to our next story, surrounding the arrests in connection to Nijjar's killing. But did these arrests shed light on India's alleged involvement? Not quite. The suspects, 3 Indian men, were apprehended, but the police offered no evidence linking them to the Indian government's hand in the crime. Instead, they stated that the investigation into India's role was ongoing. Now let's pause here. The narrative could easily veer towards dismissing India's involvement, attributing the crime solely to gang activity. But as other former intelligence professionals have cautioned, let's not jump to conclusions. The presence of a criminal gang doesn't necessarily absolve the Indian government of suspicion. Here's where it gets intriguing. India's Research and Analysis Wing, or RAW, has long been suspected of leveraging criminal networks for its operations, particularly in South Asia. This modus operandi allows plausible deniability, shedding the government from direct implication. So, the question arises, are we witnessing a similar tactic being employed in the West? Has RAW extended its reach, tapping into criminal networks, even here in Canada? Most likely, yes. As we await further developments in this case, it's crucial to maintain a discerning eye. Our understanding of global intelligence requires us to peer beyond the surface, deciphering the intricate web of motivations and alliances at play. Our next story this week centers around the Israeli government's decision to shut down Al Jazeera's local offices, sparking widespread condemnation and concerns over freedom of the press and national security. Let's dive into the details. Al Jazeera's media network has condemned the Israeli government's move as a criminal act, emphasizing the importance of free press and access to information. The network's strong stance highlights the broader implications of suppressing media outlets in the name of national security. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet voted unanimously to close all Al Jazeera's operations in Israel, citing concerns over incitement and alleged collaboration with Hamas. This decision raises critical questions about the balance between security measures and the fundamental principles of free press. The closure of Al Jazeera's offices not only escalates tensions between Israel and Qatar, which funds the network, but also underscores the challenges faced by journalists operating in conflict zones. Al Jazeera's role in covering the Palestine-Israel conflict has been pivotal, shedding light on some critical events and providing a platform for diverse perspectives. Press freedom groups have condemned Israel's decision, labeling it atrocious, and warning of potential repercussions for other media organizations. The implications of this move extend beyond Al Jazeera, signaling a broader threat to journalistic integrity and freedom of expression worldwide. I find it difficult to believe that the continued press monitoring of the events in Israel and Gaza could be considered a threat to national security. I've been reading Al Jazeera articles with a critical eye for some time now and found that the reporting is well balanced and well sourced. The Israeli government decision to oust them and shut them down reflects poorly on their ability to discern what is a national security threat and what isn't. As we navigate through these complex geopolitical dynamics, it's essential to uphold the principles of transparency, accountability, and respect for press freedom. The closure of Al Jazeera's offices served as a stark reminder of the challenges facing journalists and the importance of safeguarding their essential role in democratic societies. In the next story, we shed light on the latest developments in the realm of financial security, as our focus turns to cryptocurrency, where regulatory oversight is being asserted with increasing vigor. In a significant move, Canada's federal anti-money laundering agency, FINTRAC, has levied a hefty $6 million fine on cryptocurrency exchange giant Binance Holdings Limited. This action comes as a result of Binance's failure to register with FINTRAC as a foreign money services business. Furthermore, FINTRAC scrutiny revealed that Binance neglected to report large, vital currency transactions exceeding $10,000, which is required by law. These lapses underscore the growing imperative for robust regulatory compliance within the cryptocurrency sector. FINTRAC Chief Executive Sarah Paquette emphasized the agency's commitment to collaboration with businesses, aiming to foster a culture of compliance and accountability. This approach underscores the importance of regulatory engagement and safeguarding financial integrity. Binance's retreat from the Canadian market, announced last year amidst regulatory uncertainties, reflects the mounting pressures facing cryptocurrency exchanges and navigating compliance frameworks. The company's recent $4 billion settlement in the U.S. for violating anti-money laundering and sanction laws further underscores the gravity of regulatory noncompliance. As governments worldwide intensify efforts to regulate the burgeoning cryptocurrency landscape, stakeholders must heed the call for transparency, accountability, and adherence to regulatory standards. The evolving regulatory landscape poses challenges, but also offers opportunities for fostering trust and legitimacy in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. I've previously done a video entitled Cryptocurrency and Terrorism, which highlights the many ways terrorist organizations use cryptocurrency to fund their activities and hide money from intelligence and law enforcement agencies. You can check that out on YouTube at Inside Intelligence Gink. That's Gink. In the next story, we dive into the headline that has sent ripples of concern across Europe. Rise in Chinese espionage, arrests alarm Europe. As Chinese President Xi Jinping embarked on his European tour, allegations of Chinese espionage swept through the continent like wildfire. From the UK to Germany, authorities found themselves entangled in a web of suspicions and arrests. In the UK, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak revealed a breach in British military payroll records, attributing the compromise to a malign actor with fingers pointing towards China. Meanwhile, in Germany, arrests were made in connections with suspected espionage activities, shaking the political landscape. The recent surge in arrest and investigation reflects the shifting sentiments towards Chinese threats in Europe. Experts suggest that while such activities have simmered for years, they are now thrust into the spotlight, compelling nations to confront the uncomfortable reality of Chinese espionage. Roderick Kiesewetter, a German MP, underscores the gravity of the situation, highlighting the long-standing warnings from German security services about the Chinese threat. Despite these warnings, action was delayed, allowing the issue to escalate unchecked. There's a palpable concern that Chinese influence operations, ranging from traditional espionage to more subtle forms of coercion, have intensified amidst Europe's hardened stance against China. Nigel Inkster, the former deputy chief of MI6, asserts that complexities of the European-Chinese relationship paved the way for increased Chinese activity. But what are the objectives of Chinese spies? Experts outline three main priorities: shaping political and economic landscapes, gathering intelligence on sensitive industries, and monitoring diaspora populations, particularly minority groups like Tibetans and Uyghurs. The targeting of diaspora groups not only serves intelligence gathering purposes, but also aims to sow seeds of insecurity and apprehension among these communities, undermining trust in host countries' ability to protect their citizens. China's intelligence machinery, primarily managed by the Ministry of State Security, operates with strategic nuance, leveraging both state apparatus and a network of private entities to further its interests. As Europe grapples with the multifaceted challenge posed by Chinese espionage, one thing remains clear: vigilance is paramount. Understanding the intricate layers of China's operation is essential in safeguarding national security and preserving democratic values. For more on the history, makeup, and operation of the Chinese Ministry of State Security, go to www.globalintelligenceknowledgenetwork.com and click on the Dossiers file, where you can find and have access to information on multiple intelligence organizations from around the world. In the next story, we turn our focus to a pressing issue. The trend of declassifying U.S. intelligence poses a serious risk, an ex-CIA officer says. Declassifying intelligence as a tactic to disrupt adversaries' plans has become increasingly prevalent in the U.S. While this approach may yield short-term benefits, two former CIA officials caution against the long-term consequences it poses for intelligence agencies. David Guyoy and Michael Morrell, distinguished veterans of the CIA, underscore the grave risks associated with routine declassification, particularly the potential politicization of intelligence. They argue that shaping intelligence to align with the agenda of the current administration could erode public trust and compromise the integrity of intelligence agencies. The Biden administration's strategic declassification, such as revealing Russian intentions preceding the invasion of Ukraine and disclosing Chinese plans regarding Taiwan, exemplify this trend. While these disclosures may have deterred adversaries, they also raise concerns about unintended consequences, including exposing intelligence sources and methods. Goy and Morel highlight the delicate balance between transparency and national security. While some instances of declassification may serve strategic objectives, they caution against the potential fallout, including erosion of intelligence credibility and increased vulnerability of intelligence assets. The risk of intelligence politicization looms large. Historical examples like Lyndon Johnson's manipulation of intelligence during the Gulf of Tonkin incidents serve as cautionary tales of dangers inherent in weaponizing intelligence for political gain. While Goy and Morrell refrain from directly implicating the Biden administration, concerns linger about the precedent set and the potential for exploitation by future administrations. The integrity of decision makers in handling declassification becomes paramount in safeguarding national security issues. As we navigate this evolving landscape of intelligence practices, it's imperative to tread cautiously, balancing the imperatives of transparency with the imperative of protecting sensitive information critical to national security. In yet another example of escalating tensions between the UK and Russia, we have a story entitled UK to expel Russian defense attaché over Moscow's dangerous activities. The British government's decision to expel Maxim Ilovik, Russia's defense attaché, marks a significant escalation in efforts to counter Moscow's intelligence gathering operations on UK soil. Home Secretary James Cleverly minced no words in his address to Parliament, condemning what he described as the reckless and dangerous activities of Russian government across Europe. The expulsion of Ilovik, labeled an undeclared military intelligence officer, underscores the seriousness of the situation. But this move is not an isolated action. It's part of a broader strategy that includes rescinding diplomatic status from Russian-owned properties suspected of intelligence activities and imposing new restrictions on Russian diplomatic visas and visits. Cleverly's warning of anticipated accusations and rhetoric from the Russian government reflects an anticipated backlash. As tensions escalate, both sides brace for diplomatic standoff, with Russia vowing an appropriate response to what it deems groundless accusations. The backdrop to these measures is a long-standing animosity between the UK and Russia, fueled by allegations of espionage, cyber attacks, and targeted killings. The invasion of Ukraine only exacerbated these tensions, leading to the UK's imposition of sanctions on Russia's oligarchs and crackdown on money laundering. Foreign Secretary David Cameron's unequivocal message to Russia underscores the gravity of the situation. As Moscow's actions grow bolder, the UK remains resolute in its determination to defend its sovereignty and European security. Maxim Ilovik's expulsion is a stark reminder of the old-school espionage that is still alive and well, and that the Cold War never really thawed. Canada and other Western nations need to remember that Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin, is a former spy and places a lot of stock in what he believes can be achieved by spies in other countries. He was just re-elected for the 5th time and demonstrates he is not likely to be going anywhere anytime soon. It also shows that this worldview and plans for the future most definitely involve continued efforts to spy on Western nations any way he can. Well, that'll wrap it up for this week's episode of Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. If you enjoyed the podcast, please reshare it, leave a like, review, or a comment. I'd love to hear from you and see what you have to say about the show. You can hear my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere your smart speaker can access the show. You can also find more on www.globalintelligencenetwork.com. I also do a podcast with 2 other former intelligence professionals, Al Tredenick and Phil Gursky, called Spies Like Us. It's like sitting around a coffee shop or a bar listening to old spies talk about everything from tradecraft to politics. Just ask your smart speaker where you can check it out. So until next week, I've been your host, Neil Bisson, for the Global Intelligence Weekly Wrap-Up. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.